Okay, cool. I'm just gonna go by and I'm gonna ask everyone, what does feminism mean to you and why do you or don't you identify as a feminist? So Ariel, we can start with you.
I wouldn't identify as a modern feminist because I don't really feel any affinity for third wave feminism any way, shape, or form, but I support social and legal equality for men and women. And so I think that I think the term feminism has been co-opted by the left in some pernicious ways. So I'd like to identify as a feminist, but I'm not sure in the current vernacular that's really possible.
Got it. Blair, what do you identify as?
I definitely identify as a feminist, though I do agree that there has been, kind of a fraught history of feminism, particularly when you look at women's liberation. You often see people cite like 1920 as the year when women got the right to vote, but Native American women didn't have citizenship until 1924, much less the ability to vote until the Voting Rights Act was passed in, 65. So it's definitely a fraught term, but I think presently there's a lot of great feminist discourse where I do feel comfortable with the term, but it's not like my one axis.
Got it. Kate?
Yeah, I identify as a feminist, but I'm from a region in Texas where people are like, I'm a feminist and all my guns are pink. And I don't quite think that's feminism, but I agree that it's a constantly evolving.
By people on the far left, I think that we can all agree that everyone wants equality of the sexes.
So you don't identify as a feminist?
It depends like what you define a feminist. If we're talking about like previously mentioned, equal rights, then of course I don't think there's a single person who would not want equal rights between the sexes. But if we're talking about feminism today, where it's become so radicalized, then I don't want to be associated with that movement.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a feminist. I'm a libertarian feminist, which a lot of people think that there's a disjunct between libertarianism and feminism, but I actually think that they have the same goals. It's basically about getting the state out of people's lives and allowing them to live whatever life path is best for them as an individual, regardless of their sex or gender.
Snaps for that.
Deja?
I identify as a feminist. It was the lens through which I first started to explore my identity. And more than that, my identity is as a young person, a woman of color, someone who experienced homelessness and poverty. And I think feminism is what you make it. And for me, it's very individualized. It's something that I've explored and is always growing for me.
Thank you. Simon?
I don't consider myself a feminist.
As it pertains to being Black, as it pertains to being also trans, as it pertains to this movement, I struggle with saying, oh, I'm a feminist, but also support women's rights at the same time. So it's something that I sit with. Where do I fall in as it pertains to moving? I know the issues that I want to talk about, so I lean more towards the issues versus saying that I quickly identify historically knowing how feminists as a movement is moving currently.
Got it. Is the term feminist inclusive of all women?
No.
Why not?
I think that as a Jewish woman, it's very exclusive towards Jewish women. When I was at the Women's March, the leaders of the Women's March are known to be very anti-Semitic, and I just don't feel as a Jewish woman or as a conservative woman that I belong in the feminist movement.
Ariel, and then...
I was just going to second what Lauren said in terms of being exclusionary for Jewish women in particular. I think it was really egregious the way in which it took so long for people, especially on the left, to actually condemn or distance themselves from the Women's March. And I think there are other people on this panel who could probably speak as well to the fact that if you are pro-life, as I myself am, there is also no space for you in modern feminism.
Bucket, I'm going to sit where I want, and I think that that's kind of the beauty of feminism, right? It is this radical movement that says you are supposed to be rebellious, and if people aren't going to create space for you, then you take space for yourself.
Right. So, if you're not a feminist, are you against women?
No.
Okay, cool.
I mean, unless you're against women.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can be against women and not a feminist.
Yeah. It's like squares and
But I don't think that just identifying as not a feminist means that you're against women, because I think that a lot of people just identify against what they see as what feminism is, and not necessarily the actual idea of feminism as this larger conceptual idea.
And I think, too, you can be a feminist and still be against women. Just because you subscribe to a label doesn't mean that you're, like, peachy.
My next question, similar to a question I asked before, but now I'm changing it up. Are feminists anti-men?
Some are.
Yeah, sure. I think there are some. I do think that there are some people who view feminism as anti-men, and I think there is a smaller number of people who consider themselves feminists and are anti-men.
And I think too, there's a conflation of patriarchy and men.
Yes.
And so people like, you know, feminism is anti-patriarchy, right? And like, because there's so many systems that are against women, it's a fear that like,
I want to work them in, and I want to leverage their privilege to help amplify all of our voices, right?
And I like that you brought up the idea of patriarchy, because I think that people view patriarchy as men, like all men are in positions of power, et cetera. And that's not true. It's about this certain view of how society should function that in many ways hurts men as well,
like
right?
this idea that you have to be like ultra fit, ultra masculine, you have to provide, that you can't have any mental health issues, that you have to be straight, that you have to be just kind of in this box. It's very harmful for people because like that is not how the mass majority of people have functioned in human history.
I just also want to push back on the idea that, you know, we live in a society that's necessarily dominated by men, because if you actually look at educational achievement and attainment in this country, women are the ones that are getting the vast majority of bachelor's degrees. Advanced higher education is now dominated by women. So when we say, you know, we live in a society where men are dominating it, I'd actually say there's a lot of evidence out there that is suggesting that women are actually outpacing men, and especially in terms of earnings and all sorts of other things. So I think we can have a longer conversation about that as well. I'd be happy to, but I do think that there is, you know, this attitude that, you know, women are being, you know, oppressed by men. I think there's a lot to suggest out there, especially Christine Hoff Sommers has done quite a bit of dominated society, because I think women are dominating in a lot of different ways, and I'm happy to see women succeed.
Question. I just want to know, we're talking about the past and all of this stuff. I just want to know how we're going to fix it, how we're going to get past it and move forward instead of just being stuck on the past.
Well, I think
By talking about it.
Yeah, well, I think that part of what empowers people to change the present is knowing what was structurally against them in the past, right? So
I'm just tired of talking. If we want to, you know, make progress and do better and get women working, you know, and stop, you know, single moms from being poor and stuff, what are the programs? How are we going to reach out? How are we going to fix it? Because talking is really not doing nothing.
You say you don't identify as a feminist, and you just want to see the action. You want to leave the past.
Yeah, I'm
in the
about
past.
action. I'm not about just keep talking and just talking and talking. I want programs. Let's go to the White House. Let's go to the government. Let's go out here. Let's go vote. Let's make sure that our representatives are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Let's get back to the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Come together, make our own programs. You get what I'm saying? I'm all about that stuff. I'm not about just sitting down talking. I'm about action.
In America today, do you feel that women still need to fight for equality?
Yes.
Why?
Just look at the GOP. I mean, where's the representation? I think that's the thing, coming from tech person, to bring these issues up to the table. It's not going to get dealt with. There's not going to be any type of solutions or policies or programs that go into play. And I'm at the point now where I don't think the government's the end all be all. I think it's time we have to save ourselves. And so I think that that's kind of what we have to come back to, is grassroots activism and being the help that our communities need, because we see the need. They're very visible to us. They're not visible in politics at this point, at least not on the right.
Even though there was like this there was this awakening on the Democrat side in terms of having more women, I wouldn't say that a lot of the women that came into the Democratic Party or were representing the Democrats were not women that I felt like I could really connect with. For me, at least, if it's a man or a woman, if it's the ideology that I can align with, I don't necessarily need a woman to feel represented.
So are there not quality Republican women then?
There definitely are, but my point is that, you know, there is definitely like a messaging and imaging problem within the GOP. I'm not disputing that, but I vote based on whatever ideas I think are being put forth that I think are the best, whether it's a man or a woman putting them forth.
So I'm going to move on. We're already on the topic of the government and just everything that's going on. So I'm going to move on with a couple questions here. But by a show of hands, who here voted for Trump?
I don't publicize my votes, actually.
So does anyone have questions for the women here that voted for Trump?
Election from him, you know, I just couldn't vote for her just because she was a woman. So I did vote for Trump.
Why
but
not write in?
Because that's wasting a vote.
But it was a joke.
But it was a joke vote, so.
Okay, well, me, I support Trump simply because he's a businessman, and I come from a business family. I was raised, my dad was a single dad. He owned his own business. So, you know, who wouldn't want to vote for Trump?
He's
a businessman. He's a whole billionaire.
It was handed to him
He's
by
an
his father.
entire billionaire. Just because his dad gave him $1 million afterwards, what does that mean? You have to keep up with that. How you build from that 1 million?
I personally feel like
I mean, and he went, and he got that 1 million. He went all the way like into debt, almost into like what, $1 billion debt. Came up out of that, and have been successful ever since. And I mean, and me, I'm not a person that just sit there and watches one news channel. I go out and I go to the Women's March. I go and I talk to everybody. I see both sides. I'm not a one-sided person. I would never be that, because once you're a one-sided person, then they can easily eat you alive. Period.
Do you consider yourself a Republican?
No, I'm a conservative.
But you like Trump, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I didn't vote. Vote doesn't matter that much, but the ideas behind the vote I think do matter. And for me, I tried it, I weighed them on everything, and I just kept coming up where they were just equally bad. These were the 2 least popular presidential candidates of American history, period, both of them, right?
And I'm gonna like recant my statement. You know, it was like a really hard election because, you know, it was like my first time voting. And again, you know, I thought that Donald Trump was a really he didn't represent me. And do I regret my decision? I'm not gonna divulge in that. But again, I think that voting is important. And when I said it was a joke, I think that was kind of an inappropriate thing to say.
Okay. Also, I was never gonna vote for Hillary, period. First of all, she upset me because she over there, she comes on a black radio station talking about I got hot sauce in my bag, like girl boo. Then at the end, she didn't never talk about what she was gonna do for the black community, but she had the nerve to get Beyonce and Jay-Z up there and throw us a concert 2 days before election. Like, girl, how is that gonna help us? We love Beyonce and Jay-Z, but how is that gonna help the black community? She called us super predators. Her husband sat up there. He signed a whole crime bill which locked up the most black men in history. I'm not about to, no. She got it. I wasn't gonna vote for her, period. She's so corrupt, like the Clintons, they corrupt.
Going to be the first woman president. If we look for her, who voted for her, it was largely women in their 60s. And I think it's because for those women, they saw this as the one opportunity for women to ever get to that higher office. Millennial women like me, we didn't vote for Hillary Clinton because I think that we see that the world's getting to a place where there's going to be a chance for a woman who might actually be good for the office, right?
She felt like she just owned the election. Like when her and Obama was going at it, they literally destroyed each other. And then they came out and they was like, oh, buddy, buddy. Oh, you think since, you know, you friends with Obama, I'm gonna vote for you because Obama black, and you know, we was down with Obama. Girl, boo, get up out of here. You got me messed up. Hillary Clinton tried to play me and she wasn't, period.
So let me ask you a question. So like Loren and
Trump didn't never play me, period. Everything Trump said that he was gonna do, he did it, period.
So a question for Loren and Diamond. What has been your experience with progressive women? Knowing that you voted for Trump. You
mean like once I came out as a Trump supporter, I got a lot of hate. I lost a lot of friends, a lot of family members. You know, I get called Uncle Tom, Coon. It don't even matter. Like,
do you feel like you get it on both sides, both being black and a woman?
Yeah, being black. They always be like, as a black woman. I'm a businesswoman. I want to own my own business. I want to be a business.
Most intolerant people. One of my friends got punched in the face at UC Berkeley just because he was tabling with a conservative organization. You see this happening all the time.
And vice versa. And vice versa.
I've never
people die for being people of color all the time.
People of color die, like literally
not
die.
Punch in the face, but like
death. And I think when we're having this conversation about conservative, I think it's also like as was uplifted that how this country uplifts white supremacy. And there is a conversation about anti-blackness that we also must and get to have a conversation about that exists in this space.
I thought that we were talking about politics on being conservative or liberal, not colored.
But they're all intertwined. You can't divide them because we exist with all of those identities, not just as a woman, but a first-generation American woman or immigrant woman of color. All of those are our identities.
So my next question is, how is abortion, pro-life, and pro-choice wrapped up into feminism? So that's one pack there.
I think for a lot of people, feminism, this wave of feminism has become synonymous with abortion. And so it's something where if you don't subscribe to abortion, then you don't belong in the feminist movement. And I think that that's where we're trying to create a space because we follow something called the consistent life ethic, which means we oppose all. So for me, this is actually a very progressive belief, more human rights for more human beings. And when I talk to people about this, you know, the common response I get is like, all right, I disagree with that, but I see where you're coming from. And so from there, I try to take it to a common ground perspective of, you know, if you're pro-choice, cool, like legally you can have an abortion in this country, but let's talk about what these other choices are as well. And how can we support women who are facing unplanned pregnancies like I had when I was 16 years old, you know? What was the support and honestly the privilege I had to be able to choose life for my son, because so many women don't have that. And so by saying, oh, you know, abortion's pro-choice, for a lot of women it's not. It's the only choice. It's a necessary evil. And so I think that feminists have to come together and create space to have dialogue like this.
And I think personally, I very much agree. And I'm always kind of like, when folks say that they're pro-life, but then they don't give a shit about black people getting murdered in the streets, they don't care about black trans women having the life expectancy of 35 years old. I'm kind of like, where's this energy to be quote unquote pro-life, but the only life you care about is before, you know, exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like it has to be a more holistic approach. And I think that when you see feminism that has this one axis that only talks about abortion, like having gone to school in Louisiana, I knew kids who knew what abortion was before they knew what a pap smear was. And you should be able to talk about all of
fetuses, and yet I've always believed, like, you know,
They were passed around fetuses?
the baby at different months, these little plastic. You know, it was traumatizing. It was like at the different things. But 9 months in America, you're not, unless there's something wrong with you, you can't have an abortion at 9 months. This is not Asia. This is not one of those.
Have you not been paying attention to New York? What just happened?
Yes, you can. So this
And
is
in
the egregious.
Virginia.
There's also the Democrats voted against this Born Alive survivor. Basically, there was a bill that was proposed that would have criminalized not providing health care to a child that survives an abortion. And this is something that I felt like this is the logical conclusion of abortion is infanticide. When you decide to dehumanize a child and decide that its worth is based on its convenience in your life, and you have decided that once that child is born and it survives a botched abortion, it's living and breathing, and it's not a criminal activity to deny it health care, take it to a hospital, that is hugely problem. I think that is reprehensible and it is infanticide.
So from a medical context, when an abortion happens and they're, you know, like the fetus is otherwise viable, then you don't generally see just fetal tissue being discarded. It generally is like if the mother's life
About birth
But
control
abortion isn't
and
birth
sex
control.
education
Yeah.
as well.
Abortion isn't birth control, and most people don't use abortion as birth control. But I think,
And most people
like,
wouldn't have
look,
abortions
so
if they
I
had
think
access
that
to birth control.
we need to have OTC, not insurance, not going through, but we need OTC access to birth control and. No, over the counter, $5 for everybody. Not just for birth control, but for Plan B, which it's worth mentioning, people confuse it with the abortion drug. There is a pill that you can take that will induce an abortion. Plan B does not do that. What it does is it prevents. Plan B prevents a pregnancy from happening. Essentially, what it does is it prevents an egg prevents a fertilized egg from implanting. So you never become pregnant in the first place. And if you're already pregnant, it does not harm the baby. And this is huge. This is a big one. We have to culturally change what it means to be a young, poor, or single mother. As long as you're shaming women for being single moms, for being young moms, as long as we're treating people poorly, as long as we're holding them back, if they're not able to go to school, they're not able to get a job, they're not able to do all of these things, you're giving them an incentive for abortion. When they're they get kicked out of church, they get kicked out of their homes. Like, that is the cause of most of.
I don't disagree. The Bible, and she started chanting, "My body, my choice, my body, my choice." But even then, it was like they were both yelling at each other. There was no conversation, and at least now I like that there's conversation. But I do think it's my body, my choice, and that the government should not be regulating it because we're going to go around it anyway. Coat hangers, like horrific thing.
Well, and that's the issue. It's supply and demand, right? So they're trying to cut off supply, but they're not addressing the demand side and why this is an issue. I think preventative care, I think sex education, like all of these things, every prevented potential pregnancy is a prevented potential abortion. So I am all for us actually addressing the demand side and freaking keep the Bible out of it. It's just basic science and biology at this point. point. Like that's how we have the conversation.
Also, like, keep
So
the
my next
pronouns,
question,
like,
Don't make
by
it
show of
really-
hands, do you support the Me Too movement?
I used to.
Okay, and why did you
Because
use to
I feel
and no
like the
longer?
Me Too movement have been hijacked, honestly.
Say that once more.
It's been hijacked, honestly,
By whom?
by liberals. They took it to extreme. I went to a protest. It was believe all women. No, because my dad's a single dad. He have dated many women. What if a woman lied on my dad? Then I wouldn't have my dad to raise me, and I'd be in foster care or something. I understand. I'm a victim of molestation and stuff, so I understand.
That, you know, I think that the Me Too movement did a lot of good. But with that being said, I think the whole idea of believe all women unequivocally is also a problem because, you know, there are instances where women do lie, and, you know, even an accusation can cause horrific damage towards an individual. It's damaging. So we need to be very careful how we go about this.
So I want to speak to that a little bit because I very much do believe in due process, but I don't think that believe women, or when they say believe survivors, I don't think they mean believe them in the face of all evidence that points to the opposite. I think it's more like if someone comes and tells you, hey, my car got stolen, you don't tell them, prove to me that your car got stolen. There's no way I won't believe it until you can prove it. I think it's more you believe that their car was stolen and then you investigate it as if it were stolen. And then if it suddenly appears that it wasn't stolen and they've had it at home in their garage the whole time, then you're like, hey, I don't believe you on this. Now you have to justify it, right?
I think that's a really accessible way to put it, right? We're trying to change the culture. It's about changing culture and like changing the assumptions that are ingrained in us.
So my next question, has work culture changed for the better because of Me Too?
I think yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to look at Trump, and he said the grab the pussy thing. Like, I cannot get over that. I cannot get over
Trump
how-
said that in privacy.
That is the
He was
music.
right, just like you and me.
No. This is free speech. You can say whatever you want to say.
That's fine.
You can say whatever you want to say. That was private, and he recorded him. He violated Trump. Trump can say whatever he want to say. Women talk nasty about men in their own privacy, and so
I
can
don't say
Trump.
that about men.
So
I
can
don't
Trump.
say that I
and
like
Trump
to assault
said,
men.
Trump said groupies will literally let you. Have y'all never been around groupies? Because
So,
they do.
My grandmother used to
He
say
just
that
told the
integrity
truth.
is what happens in private, and if that I don't want a politician in the like, you know, unfortunately that's the case, that does like messed up fuck shit in private because
Okay, but
it's in
Obama,
private.
Obama smoked weed.
That's okay with me. That's not the same as
Okay, if Obama,
Weed is
No. You gotta hold everybody. You gotta hold everybody on the same line. If Obama can do that,
So that's
so can Trump. Trump can say whatever he want to say.
Can we
Trump
get
can
from
say
Deja
whatever he
vu?
want to say.
So, I mean, I think the difference,
I'm just
right,
saying
is like,
because weed is illegal in some places.
Yeah,
I'm just
absolutely,
saying.
because it's a
So if
criminalized
he can do
behavior
that, if
with
he
no
can do that and
victim.
say that and do that, then so can he.
It's a criminalized behavior with
It's
no
not.
victim.
I think, okay? So he was going to be the first man, right? He was going to be the first man. So if we want to be like real about this conversation, he was going to be the first man we've ever had in this country.
Right, but that would also be holding
So-
his wife accountable for
But
his
this
actions.
is exactly. But I'm
Which is, like,
but-
very-
That's why I, as a feminist, couldn't vote for her because she was
Right.
trying to suppress
Silence.
women's rights.
She tried to silence his accusers.
So
this is
I mean, I agree with holding men to account for their
right. But
So
I
let me
agree
just
with
have her
that.
finish, and then we can move on to Deja, and then have another.
But you were going on. You were saying it better than I was. But she did try to silence his accusers in a lot of different ways. And if we're going to talk about
continues.
Exactly.
Right,
And we're
okay.
going to talk about
It
the importance of the
continues.
Me Too movement. We have to reckon with things that happened in the past that are probably uncomfortable. And I think that's been a big part of the Me Too movement. I do think there are excesses to the Me Too movement that you talked about very poignantly, which is sort of the backlash or the attitude that people have towards it. Do I think there's a possibility of people misunderstanding? I think that's that's been a big, significant chunk of it. I don't know the percentage, but I do think that there are a lot of men now that are like, wait, like how do I behave now? What's the appropriate way to behave? And the hard part with that too is a lot of people meet their spouses at work. And so a lot of the behavior, a lot of the behavior that we engage in when we are dating with someone, it's hard because those boundaries get blurred at work so many times. It's kind of scary for men and women. How do we navigate how to date in the workplace?
Well, do you
Because
think
that's a
that
reality?
dating- that's actually a question that I wanted to bring up. Do you feel that Me Too has affected dating?
So I am friends with a lot of men, and they think that they're scared of dating. I don't. And when I talk to them, I'm like, can you please elaborate? And they're like, well, what happens if I had too much to drink and the girl had too much to drink and she wakes up the next morning? And because I've had discussions with a lot of females as well, and I had a conversation with one of my TAs in one of my classes, and what she said was absolutely terrifying. She said, if I had alcohol and the guy had alcohol and I wake up the next morning and I don't remember it, then that's rape. But it's like, but what happens if both of you guys are intoxicated during a night? Should you not have sex when you're drinking at all? Like, who should limit that? So I think that's a very serious discussion we should have with our partners. But a lot of men are terrified of taking a girl home who's had any amount of alcohol because he doesn't want to get accused of sexual assault.
I think it's better to be worried about that than to do it and not worry about it.
Exactly. I agree.
Also,
I agree. Yeah.
Join the club. Like, girls and women and femmes have been terrified to go on dates and go home and drink forever. So join the club. Like, let's all get on it together and fix it, because it's on.
Activities, like, we started asking each other, like, can I kiss you? And like, are more vocal during sex. And I think that's like better. Oh, by the way, I'm Muslim and I have sex. That's going to be a big thing. But I can't wait for that backlash tweets. But anyway, I think that, as far as looking at like sexual relationships, looking at intimacy and looking at dating, like just conversations about consent and being more affirmative about consent and having more conversations, like whether that's like, hey, I take medication, or hey, like this is like I'm on birth control or I'm not, or like when was the last time you were tested? I think all of that has to be a larger conversation, and I'm seeing that within the queer community happen a lot more as Me Too is happening, but also because we have to deal with more of this, and because like health outcomes, for example. So I'm seeing a lot. I don't know about the straights though. It sounds pretty rough.
I'll talk about the straights and the whites and the things. But I'm from such a conservative rural area where I was always told being a flirt means you have a good personality. I'm supposed to let people hug me, or I'm being really rude. And for me, this idea of consent and young girls saying, actually, I don't want to hug, I'm so that is radical to me, because I was taught you're being rude to this person. And so consent is parallel to boundaries for me.
Right, for my next question, by a show of hands, are trans women helping push forward women's movement and gender equality?
Oh, I want to hear that.
We wouldn't have the advancements in the women's liberation movement if we hadn't had this conversation about LGBTQ rights movement happening simultaneously.
I think as a trans woman on this panel, I often experience that women feel that trans women are not supporting us. It's like, well, trans women often get pushed to the corner, like, we don't want you in our spaces, but yet we stand and fight. Even with, as trans women of color, we started and supported the Black Lives Matter movement, and then oftentimes we still see Black trans women being murdered, and there's no conversation around it.
For the people that disagreed, would you like to make a statement?
I sort of disagree. I thought people didn't raise their hand.
No statement?
I think it's interesting though, right? Because when you didn't raise your hand, which was passive, but when you have to actively deny someone their humanity, their agency to their face, it's really something different.
I'm not denying anything. I don't have that much knowledge on it, so I'm listening and I'm learning.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
All right, perfect. So, do traditional gender roles have a place in society?
Yes.
Sure, yes. I think as long as they're voluntary, I think as long as people actually want that, and we're in a situation where they're actually able to make those choices for themselves on an individual level, I think it's fine. The problem is when people are forced into it.
And I've also seen a lot of shaming from radical liberal feminists who shame stay-at-home moms. It's not my kind of lifestyle. I agree.
I think that there is inherent value in traditional gender roles, and there are certain occupations that are more suited to, I'm thinking about, there are certain time, for construction, for instance, right? When we talk about this inequity in gender role, in gender distribution in certain industries like construction, I don't necessarily think the answer is we go into the construction industry and say, okay, we need 50% women and 50% men, because I do think that there are certain gender differences that sort of make women at least gravitate towards a certain field, and not because there's a cultural pressure, but because there's an innate desire to be there.
I disagree slightly, because I feel like gender role as it exists currently is also tied to binary, right? So again, my experience is different, and I see trans folks who operate differently, and in school, so I feel like gender roles has this patriarchal kind of system of how, if you're mask presenting, you automatically fall under operating masculine. And if you're femme presenting, you automatically have to fit into the role of how feminine and women operate, which I think is hindering on just, again, the intimacy and what can actually be possible to create. So, slightly disagree.
My next question, Are there ways in which women are privileged in our society as opposed to men?
Yes.
How so?
Like I mentioned.
Towards women, and I think that does, play into this. It does become a sort of privilege, an informal privilege.
I think when we're talking about those like cultural privileges, that they don't apply to all women. Like that is white women have a lot of those privileges, whereas brown and black women are not getting those same privileges. We're not experiencing that. And I think white women have a lot of privilege over a lot of men of color too. Rich white women over like the poor men of color from my neighborhood. The privilege difference is enormous.
Even not rich. I mean, I grew up without money, but because I look like this, I got away with a lot. Like,
and the interesting thing too is like how assumptions about gender can influence too. So like because I wear a hijab, I'm read as Arab, but when I'm read as, when I have my like little fro out and I'm like read as black, then I don't have that same like grace that a woman is granted. So I'm read as demure and quiet, but when I'm read as black, I'm read as angry and violent and masculine. But when you look at me being read as a Muslim woman, I feel like I can get away with more like in a professional space because, she's speaking up, she's being brave. And it's like, no, I'm just loud, but it's assumed that I'm not going to be. And then that is given like a token of, wow, good on you.
Which is come back to like when you ask these questions, I often say it's to whom you're asking them, because we have multiple identities.